Good morning, Marines, and welcome back. Today we're going to begin with the breakout session, where we try to move up that food chain a little bit to identify those who participated in the fall from grace a little bit more in detail than we have in the previous episodes. So, as with any group, there are those people at the bottom that must contribute to make all this sustainable. I've been mostly speaking about those individuals in Ohio, and I am or have been gradually moving up that food chain within their support network, such as Jerry Holt and Russ Miller, for an example. For them to be able to operate in such a manner, there must be what I call reprobates in place to cover the small details. In this session, and session A and session B, we will be discussing a few of them and how they contributed to the fall from grace by covering for and carrying out what Mr. Baker wanted instead of what was right by the member or the Marine. So let's take a look at them, shall we? We will leave Mr. Baker, who's the top left on this mugshot sheet, and Mr. Samora, top right, alone for this presentation. We will get to them in the follow-on sessions, of course. We have already discussed Mr. Holt, who's on the bottom right, all the way right, and Mr. Miller, bottom center, in parts 5 and 6. So who does that leave us with moving forward? Well, top center is Mr. Bob Borka, your COO. And then you move down to your second row. From the left to the right, you have Mr. Warren Griffin, your Senior Vice Commandant. Mr. T.J. Morgan, your Junior Vice Commandant. We'll skip right over Sergeant Schultz right there. Then we go into Mr. Dennis Tobin, who is your Junior Pass National Commandant, and Mike Sturch, who is your Central Division National Vice Commandant. One would not believe that all these individuals played a part in the fall from grace. And it took all of them, plus the Ohio folks, of course, over 18 months to remove me from the rolls of the Marine Corps League because I knew too much about the operations and their complicity in all of it. At least they did finally remember some of their training regarding teamwork, and I got your 6 mentality taught in boot camp. Unfortunately, it's the wrong end of the spectrum for them. You see, it wasn't a total waste of training on them after all. So let's begin with Bob Borka. Bob Borka, he is the National Executive Director and the Chief Operating Officer for the national organization. He's also set in certain leadership positions outside of the Marine Corps League, such as the Dumfries, Virginia. This is a historic type organization, but it's also a 501c3 organization whose manta is honor, courage, and commitment. They even support those statements with Bible verses, such as in honor, they speak of Proverbs chapter 22, verse 1. Or courage, for example, Psalms 23, verse 3 and 4. And commitment, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58. Clearly, it is just not a core thing. Right? It seems that they either borrowed the slogan from the Corps or the Corps borrowed it from them. However, in either case, I will leave that up to you to decide, not on my agenda for today. So, this clearly debunks Mr. Borka's argument that he does not know what needs to be done in a leadership position. The shame of it all is that he, like the others who have lost their way, has chosen to do otherwise. By the way, just so you know, they are looking for someone new to replace him as the president of said 501c3. And I believe that any Marine could fill that position as long as they are Marines and not in the title only. Remember, honor, courage, and commitment. These are words that we as Marines live by and eschew in our character 24/7 till you die. Period. Mr. Borka served in the Corps from 1989 to 94 and is considered a Desert Storm veteran. He has been the National Executive Director and COO since 2017, taking over from Tom Hazlitt. Mr. Borka now is employed by the National Board of Trustees and shall be responsible directly to that body. No one else, that body. He is responsible for the management and direction of all programs, activities, and affairs of the Marine Corps League. He shall aid all committee and staff officers as requested. All matters which are under the jurisdiction of the National Judge Advocate in accordance with the National Bylaws, Article 6, Section 625D apply. Must be referred to the NJA. So if he gets anything that discusses charges or discusses outcomes, he's supposed to defer those kind of things to the NJA. They shall perform his duties as delineated in the 2022 National Administrative Procedures, Sections 3015. Now, Mr. Borka is also responsible for the employment, supervision, termination of employment, and the determination, key word here, and the determination of the compensation of the National Headquarters staff members. He is responsible for that. And supporting personnel within approved budget guidelines as determined by the National Board of Trustees. He has oversight responsibilities as of February 2023, 2 full-time and 7 part-time employees. Now, folks, this accounts for over $400,000 worth of salaries alone per year for 10 individuals, as filed on the 990s, dated 12/16/2022, over $400,000. Then we turn around and add an additional $45,000 worth of other employee-related expenses to that, and now you're close to $500,000 in employee costs alone. It is the membership, ladies and gentlemen, that bears this burden for those 10 individuals. Sounds like a great place to work, right? He's also obligated to bring to the attention of the National Commandant and or the National Board of Trustees all matters of extraordinary expense, significance, or importance, and where appropriate or otherwise required by other provisions of the national bylaws and national administrative procedures. Obtain approval through email, or telephone vote of the majority of the National Board of Trustees before execution of any directive. It has to be approved, and he has to show that approval by the Board of Trustees, not Johnny Baker, not Russ Miller or Phil Samora, the entire Board of Trustees. Now, the bylaws state 2 things. They're kind of contradictory in nature. However, I'll let you sort that out. I'm sure you know how to look stuff up. The bylaws indicate within 90 days following each national convention and each meeting of the Board of Trustees, a brief summary of the minutes showing actions and decisions affecting the national bylaws, administrative procedures, and or policies will be posted on the National Library website, on the Marine Corps League's national website in the members library. Now that gives them 90 days to get anything that transpired or transacted posted so that everybody in the league can benefit from it and review it. However, in Article 6 of the same bylaws, subsection 630C, items number 2 and 3, it calls for all Board of Trustee minutes to be approved and posted on the national website in the membership library again within 30 days. And it falls on the COO to make that happen. And that is yet to happen correctly. Now, as you may or may not know, Bob Borka is a Marine Corps League member. Rightly so, he's a Marine, right? However, what you may or may not have known by reading your bylaws and administrative procedures is that he personally has benefited immensely from the League. Immensely, gentlemen and ladies. The kicker here, and I say this with all honesty, the kicker here is that our recently approved 2022 bylaws from August of 2022 clearly state, and I quote in Article 2, Section 205, no part of the property of the corporation and no part of its net earnings shall inure to the benefit of or be distributed to any director, member, or other private individual. Now let me see if I understand this correctly. That sentence says that Bob Borka or any one of us cannot benefit from or be paid any monies out of the net earnings of the league. I mean, that's pretty clear, cut dry. Yet Mr. Borka, along with his employees, receive almost $500,000. Mr. Borka alone gets a high six-figure salary for what he's supposed to be doing. Yet, like the others, he cannot follow the simple things in the bylaws or the administrative procedures. And currently, as a COO, I would have to say the organization is doing worse than it has since the Bloom brothers were in charge. How do I know all that? Well, it does not take a genius to figure it out. All you have to do is be involved and ask the question, where's the money? In order to do that, you need to be able to draw or pick up or find copies of the 990s. These are documents that are required by federal law to be made available to the public, not just members, to the public. And in these documents, you will be able to find what you need to find. And the facts that I'm about to present are supported by these very documents they filed with the federal government. God knows they have yet to post or publish or even provide a request or provide upon request a balance sheet, cash flow statement, any kind of financial documents to the general membership. So let me show you what I found out by only using fiscal year ending 2021 and 2022's 990s. You may have seen these posted on my Facebook page. As you can see from this chart, the National's revenues or assets are actually up, even with the losses reported on investment income and miscellaneous income or revenues. So, if we're doing so much better, then why is there a need to increase life membership by 100% come July 1st, 2023? If it costs you $200, it now will cost you $400. Unbelievable, right? So, you might want to ask, when you get a chance or an opportunity to do so, what are the benefits of paying twice the amount of money for life membership? What are they giving you for that? Why is it important to them to double that cost, and how do you justify it? Especially since the net increase in revenues for the national organization is up 24.7% over fiscal year ending 2021. That's just under $500,000. And this is actually on their 990s. I didn't make these numbers up, and I didn't just falsify it out. I just pulled the reports, plugged them into a chart. And now, the 990 that we're speaking of for 2022, fiscal year ending June of 2022, was filed by Mr. Borka in December of 2022. So like I said, they earned over $500,000 more in 2022 than they did in 2021 fiscal years. Now, all organizations, small, medium, and large, have three main categories to their success. They have to have assets, they have to have liabilities, because we all have to pay something to somebody, and equity, that are required to be reported to the IRS, or the federal government, state government, and guess who? The membership of certain organizations such as the Marine Corps League. Now, of course, as you've guessed, neither our department in Ohio nor the national organization can provide us or you with an appropriate copy, and or they have yet to present an appropriate copy of a balance sheet or a proposed budget plan at either a convention or a meeting. Now remember where we spoke earlier that all meetings have to be posted on the national website library, membership library? Well, you'll never find any of this stuff out there, and you'll never hear it on the floor at convention. The only thing that they will say is that they had a committee that looked at that financial report, got together, they approved it. Now, the very next words out of their mouth on the floor, where the body sits that's got to vote on this, is, I need a motion and a second to accept the findings of the committee. That's all you ever hear, and it's all you'll ever see. No one on the floor can review or ask questions except before they vote, where you have discussion, keep that in mind, in regards to the budget or any previous expenditures that were made or not made, or any of the questions that a normal person would ask when reviewing a document. Because if they were allowed to ask those questions and discuss that budget information, they would have been provided with a copy of said documentation for review. You'll never see that documentation. You can request it from them, and they still will not send it to you, even though they're required to do so. So, without any documentation and without any background information or specifics, you will not be able to ask a question during the discussion portion of that motion, so everybody either votes yay or nay. So that's how they get it by with all this. This is how they get it past you, pay raises. This is how they get it past you, employment decisions. They get it past all of us who used to me included, used to, be allowed to review it and vote on it. Because after all, it is the red cappers, the membership that has put these individuals in the position they're in, and we are the ones that are supposed to hold them accountable. They answer to you and I. I'm the general public now, but they still have to answer as an organization to all of us. It's not the other way around, folks. So, let's take a look at the expense/liability portion of the national organization for the very same years. I will continue to show you fiscal year ending June 2021 and fiscal year ending June of 2022's numbers off of their 990s. This is the second part of the financial responsibility by the organization to its membership or trustees or board members, etc., etc. Bob Borker, again, is still responsible to make sure that all this happens. I only placed in these columns the liabilities of the organization as reported on the 990s from 2021, 2022, as we discussed earlier. Now, there might be a column missing that requires reporting on. However, in both years, the national organization reported a 0. So instead of making this a 2.5 pager, I put everything that had numbers in it on this slide only. So again, there was no expense in those that are missing entries. As you review 990s, you'll see other fields, and that's all I'm trying to clear up for you. So we can illustrate what it cost or costs the league to operate for a year. As with their revenues, their expenses are up as well. That never goes well for the budget or the bank account, for example. When expenses are up, it just kind of eats away at your net increase or gains in your revenues. So this report here, which is available again to anybody who wants to know, shows a gigantic increase in the following areas of expenses of the national organization, again, shouldered by you, the member. For example, if you look at the chart, you can see a 1,247.6% increase in the cost of conferences, meetings, etc., etc. Now you have to understand, I can maybe go along a little bit with the fact that June of 2020 to June of 2021, there was some time in there that they didn't have a national conference and that they didn't travel. Yet they still paid out expenses to these individuals. And they did have meetings in 2021 or conferences that they attended or were part of. So this increase is a 1,247.6% increase. It's almost $78,000 over the cost originally. So it's a hell of an increase. Also, this report also indicates or shows a 497.7% increase in depreciation. In other words, they depreciated a hell out of something. There was a 120% increase in travel expenses from the previous year. And all of the things considered, I found kind of odd, was the 87.3% increase in the cost to do the accounting for the organization. Now, I don't know how the accounting was affected from COVID and lockdowns and anything like that, but in a 1 year's period of time, the accounting costs went from $13,961, went all the way up to $26,150. Now, I can understand if a new firm took over, because our 990s are like a giant cluster. And I would use the other word, but you know what I'm talking about. It's like a monkey on the football. They are a mess. The numbers reported, for example, covering employee costs, change from one page to another somehow. One page it shows Mr. Borka's salary. On the next page it shows less than that or more than that for employee salary. It's just a cluster. So take a good look at these 990s as I have. I've looked at them back for 10 years now. And you will be scratching your head as to why this is happening. Or even take a close look at the continual pay increases of the past 3 990s Mr. Borka has been receiving over these past few years. Now you have to remember, and we talked about it earlier, who's in charge of handling the pay of the employees of the organization? Oh, that's right, it's Mr. Borka. It's his responsibility. It's in his job description to manage that pay, employee wages, in accordance with the reference. And I'm making that up. That's a fact. So, if I was Mr. Borka, almost like Michael Bloom always did, I'd be giving myself a pay raise every year, which he has. See, as I noted earlier, when he took over the position from Tom Hazlitt, Tom was getting $80,000 a year, $40,000 up from the previous year he did it. So that was a 100% increase for Tom. Now, when Mr. Borka took it over, it went from $80,000 a year to $140,000, damn near another 100% doubling of the salary. So when Mr. Borka started as your COO, he was being paid $140,000. And come to think about it, I have been to several annual conventions for the past few years, except the last one in Florida because I was on temporary suspension and I was denied the ability or the opportunity to attend. And I cannot tell you, of all the ones that I've attended, and you can moving forward, or you may be able to think back on the ones you may have attended, that any increases to salary or wages came on the floor for approval to be voted on. I know I didn't vote on any, and I know a lot of people that didn't vote on them. But what happened was it was contained in those documents in that financial committee meeting that happened behind closed doors, and God knows who attended and who had input, that came out on the floor and was presented as, we've reviewed it, we've come up with a plan, and I need a motion and a second to accept it. That's where this stuff is hidden. For example, Mr. Borka has been given a generous cost of living allowance increase almost every year. This past year, he got 8.2%. He went from $148,000 to $160,000 as reported. That's quite an increase for 1 year. For what? We've already covered his job description and what he's supposed to be doing, and he's not doing any of that. He's managing what, 10 people? Hell, a shift manager at McDonald's manages 10 people. What constitutes an 8.2% pay increase? He's making almost now as much as Michael Bloom was making back in 2015, and he was making $190,000 as your COO. That's a hell of a position to get into. It's got to be the one, the apple, the jewel of the eye. That's the hell of a position. So, and we noted earlier, how can these guys be making so much money off of your money, your dues? The organization's net revenues are going to 10 employees to the tune of above $500,000 a year. And again, as I noted earlier, this is something they slide in that backroom committee meeting and never present on a breakout sheet any changes, any proposals, any additions, any subtractions, nothing to the body prior to the vote. Nothing. And they expect you to vote yes or no. Like they got your best interests at heart. I think you're finally finding out they don't. They got their pockets' best interest at heart, and or their willingness to do whatever the hell they want to do up there at heart. So, as we talked about all this, and I mentioned earlier, we have the assets, which is revenues. We have the liabilities, which are expenses. And now we have what is called equity. And equity is the value of what we have in investments, for example, or in the building, or whatever the case might be. It's the value of what you have on hand. And that too is required to be reported to everyone. So let's look at what they have reported for the organization. And again, this is in comparison only for the same 2 years, apple to apples, oranges to oranges. We're using the same 990s, just so that you know. Now, this slide should give you a better idea as to Mr. Borka's capabilities of managing an organization such as the League. You have seen an increase in spending, not really a good thing for an organization. You've seen an increase in revenues, and that's what you really want, and that's a good thing, so I give them kudos on that. But here's the hidden item that affects a lot of us and could be part of the reason why they want to double up membership, for example, or try to increase more revenues, is they have lost 5.8% of the league's net equity. They've lost another 7.9% of the Marine Corps League's net assets, which fall under restrictions. In other words, you can't use these assets unless they meet the criteria to be released from restriction. This would be something like, and I only going off the cuff here, I died tomorrow and I willed my estate to the League for distribution over a 5-year period. That has restrictions on it. You can get that money a portion of it every 5 years until it's exhausted. That's a restriction. So, but in the interim, when I gift that to the League, it's considered an asset for the League under restrictions, or a net asset, depending on whomever and whatever other things they have collected over the years. So hopefully that explained that a little bit. But as we move forward on this, as you can see, in total assets, the ones that are not normally reported, such as cash, your savings account, accounts receivables, your inventories, your building and equipment, we lost revenue in the value of those assets, as you can see by the chart. So under Mr. Borka's watch, not only did we lose $1.2 million in assets, it begs the question, why the hell are you paying him almost $175,000 a year for a salary? I'm befuddled by that. So, and we just gave him a pay raise for it too. I'm still scratching my head. You can be such a responsible or non-responsible individual as it pertains to the organization and still get a pay raise. So besides him not being able to do his job in accordance with our references, and I'm talking about the minutes, the responsibility, the finances, all of it that we talked about earlier, he has cost the organization well over $1 million from fiscal year ending 2021 to fiscal year ending 2022. The numbers don't lie, the 990s don't lie, and if this is not factual, then they misfiled or intentionally misfiled, misinformed the IRS when they did file. Now, let me remind you, I've given them ample opportunity to come to the table and discuss not only these questions or findings, but the others as well, as to the way they've done the quorum and other things that have caused the fall from grace for the Department of Ohio. It's been almost 2 years, and they have yet to want to discuss it. They have focused solely on what they accomplished this past March and kicking me the hell out, so I was out of their hair, so to speak. Okay, so let's just do a cursory review of this slide and see what it is telling us, or at least should be telling you. First of all, when you look at it, the red stuff means we lost. The blue stuff means we gained. Okay? So, they used over $29,000 from the savings account. I'm trying to figure out why they needed to pull money out of the savings account. Anybody know? Has anybody seen anything posted anywhere where they voted on it, approved it, and moved over $29,000 out of your organization's savings account? I don't know what a savings account is, but for me, my bank account has a savings account, and I put money in there not to be touched, because I need to fall back on that savings for any shortfalls or anything that may come up, an emergency or something. You know, but I have to ask my wife to do that, and he has to ask you, the Board of Trustees, to do it. They don't just do this stuff. The Board of Trustees has to approve it. If they don't approve it, you have to approve it. But somebody has to approve it, and it has to be accountable, and it has to be noted and contained within the minutes and or documents posted on the national website. And you'll never, ever find the reasons for any of that. So let's move on. Every single transaction that you see in regards to the finances of the league have to be in accordance with GAAP, which is the federal standards, and within the bylaws and approval. Now, everything that they do has to be voted on and approved by the Board of Trustees, which does not cover the limits assigned to individuals by their title, i.e. Mr. Borka. For example, I believe his limit to spend without approval is $500. That's a hell of a lot of $500 for $30,000 coming out of savings. But I'm not saying that he spent all that, but what I am saying is anything over $500 or anything over anyone's specific title limit has to be approved by the Board of Trustees. And in order to do that, you have to have a board meeting. And in order to do that, you have to have a quorum. And in order to do that, once you do have all that, you have to post those minutes with the results of that meeting. And you'll never find any of that. There's a chain of custody in all that we do as an organization. And they have broken it into little pieces and shit-canned it. You'll never know what they do. So, as I said, there are spending limits assigned to everybody. Mr. Borka's, again, was $500. And it would take a tremendous amount of individual spending just to get $30,000 out of that account. So, just because whatever justification they want to give you, just because they say it, doesn't make it so without a proper approval and or paperwork trail. Please do not let them tell you that they discussed it in executive session and it was voted on and approved while in session, and that's why you don't see it in any minutes. Because they would be lying to you. They may have discussed it in session, but in the minutes, as Mr. Borka now knows from his and I little workshop, that all actions such as appointments, charter suspension, pay raises, disbursement of funds, all that can be discussed in executive session, but the outcome of the vote, the action taken, has to be disclosed in the minutes. For example, the minutes could read, came out of executive session at 1600, the following was approved or disapproved while in session: to suspend the charter of the Department of Ohio was approved, to withdraw $29,000 out of your savings account, approved. But these things have to be listed and they have to be posted within the minutes. That procedure ensures transparency in the management of the business. If not, all organizations would go straight into executive session, do whatever the hell they wanted, come out of the session and execute whatever the hell it was, and hide it under the blanket of executive session. That's how they hide it. Whew. With a loss of over $1.2 million and the increase in expenses as shown on these slides, now you know why they want to double your membership come July 1st of this year. It's called mismanagement, or in the previous Bloom Brothers scandal, embezzlement. Therefore, in accordance with the references, the individual responsible to you and I for this financial status of the organization is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, and it happens to be Mr. Borka. Is it a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that Michael Bloom, who was the COO, was making close to $190,000 a year before he got caught up in the embezzlement issues as the COO? And now our new COO, Bob Borka, is making close to $180,000 a year? Kind of makes you wonder, how could this be happening to us again? Well, you got to remember that everybody that participated or was privy to all that went on in the Bloom Brother years is currently in position of authority now, i.e. Johnny Baker, Dennis Tobin, Wendell Webb. All of them were in those positions during that time frame. Paul Tuggy, all of them knew about this and how it was handled. And to be honest with you, it was a disgrace. Not only did they get away with taking the money, they got paid to go quietly into the night. Unbelievable. So, well, it is what it is. And this whistleblower right here has finally been kicked out because Mr. Baker said it on numerous occasions. We have to get rid of Mr. Smith because he knows too much. And that quote. So, how did Mr. Borka contribute to the fall from grace? Well, as a COO, Mr. Borka must be aware of all operational aspects of the organization. He's responsible all the way down to the detachment level for proper operations. He also knows, or should know, that the Marine Corps League was established by a government entity, Congress, and we all know that, and thus subjects it to other legal constraints than just another veterans organization has to face or mandate. His past and employment endeavors, along with his studies in business management, should have prepared him for a COO type position in an organization. The salary, God knows, supports that position title and its level of responsibilities. Or supposedly it should. However, sadly, the individual that we have placed into that position doesn't merit that salary or that responsibility. And those previous slides show that he can't manage the business the way it needs to be managed. We also know that Mr. Borka has a weak knowledge or understanding of what is required when managing the Board of Trustee minutes. We've talked about that. And posting those said minutes to the national web page, Members Library. Several occasions he had to be reminded how to do it and what needed to be contained within them. And that was done by me because I knew he was backdooring the system by not posting what needs to be posted for the review of the body. He told me that because that the board went into executive session, that he didn't have to post any minutes, and that it was none of my business what went on in executive session. Wrong, and a big boo-boo. Let me tell you, the stuff that they do in executive session up there at the National will shock you. The stuff that they report that they did will keep you complicit, because they don't report anything of happening. You'll never see it. On one or two instances, you'll see something, such as an appointment or something of that nature, which is what you're supposed to see. But on 90% of the board minutes posted, you won't see anything that happened. You'll say they went in, they came out, and they adjourned the damn meeting. That is illegal, and they're cheating you out of knowing what the hell is going on within your organization. We all know that the bylaws tells them exactly what has to happen as far as the minutes go. Article 6, Section 630C gives you everything that needs to be contained in those minutes down to the date and times. So please, let's not play like you don't know what you're supposed to be doing and how you're supposed to do it. It's written out in English in our bylaws. Can you at least read it and follow it? That's all, just follow it. So again, he has a very weak or limited understanding of what's going on with our bylaws, let alone what's going on in our detachments and our departments. Another prime example of that would be the Chapter 9 requirement of the COO to send me a certified letter indicating that I've been removed from the rolls of the Marine Corps League within X amount of days. Well, the review or the findings of the review board in March supported Mr. Miller's findings and recommendations that I be expelled. But I've yet to be expelled officially. And I probably won't see that letter, and don't really make a real big hill, being a hill to me, brother. All it does is solidify the notion that they don't know what the hell they're doing. And they can't read what it is that the body wanted them to do when they approved those bylaws. I never got that letter, and I still haven't gotten it, and I probably never will. And that's not a big deal to me. What is a big deal to me, and the part that Mr. Borka played in the fall from grace, is that weeks, months prior to the charter being suspended and prior to the charges being filed against Johnny Baker and Phil Samora, Mr. Borka and the Board of Trustees knew about the issues, and they were privy to all the details about what was facing Ohio in regards to the quorum problems. I personally sent him a letter requesting that he submit or post this gathering of information to the body, to the National Board of Trustees meeting group, the body, minus Mr. Baker and Mr. Samora, because the majority of it are actions that the Department of Ohio or the Ohio Marines don't understand why they did what they did. Nobody understands it. So we requested help. We didn't ask for help in solving charge sheets. We didn't ask for help, do you think we need to charge these individuals? We asked for clarification and support in rectifying our issues in the state of Ohio. What Mr. Borka did, and it isn't in accordance with the reference, because his reference says he needs to pass that on to the Board of Trustees, present it and it states it clearly in the bylaws. He turns around and gives it to Mr. Griffin. That definitely goes against the bylaws. So I'm just telling you, he's got a weak understanding, and he really doesn't understand what's required of him in that position. So in closing up this particular contribution, Mr. Borka, in essence, instead of being able to stop all the things that were going on at that moment he received that package, or at those moments where he received those emails indicating Ohio was falling apart, that Ohio was crumbling and it had no officers for almost a year, he elected not to do a damn thing about it as the COO. He passes it off to someone else, yet he collects the check. I wish I could pass my stuff off and still get paid to do what I'm doing. That doesn't happen in any organization. Let's be real. All right, let's get on with a summary and kind of tie up Mr. Borka in a nutshell. Now, prior to moving into the summary, I just wanted to show you just a quick slide on that request that we spoke of just in the previous slide. Here on the left, where you see request, this is what was asked of him. This is how he responded. And you can see that he truly didn't do what he was supposed to do in accordance with the reference by presenting it to the Board of Trustees. Mr. Borka had several opportunities, Marines, to do what was right by intervening in and or helping to unravel the issues that eventually caused the Department of Ohio to have its charter suspended. Based on the evidence, the emails, the letters, he chose not to intervene. He knew about it almost a year out that we were having issues in Ohio. He chose not to intervene. He also failed the national organization. They are doing worse now than they were in 2021. They've lost over $1 million in assets under his watch. Yet he gets a good pay raise, 8-point-some%. How can you look at it and then allow it to suffer like that and then take a pay raise while reducing the employees' salaries? They take a cut, he gets a pay raise. The facts speak for themselves. I don't make this up. I'm sure they all know about it. Hell, we don't know about it, but we voted on it, didn't we? Somewhere down there in one of them closed door meetings, we all voted on it. And again, he will not intervene based on the fact that it involved Mr. Baker and Mr. Samora, his buds. He didn't do the right thing. So, by him not fully earning his salary or doing his job, or by not being a true Marine and honoring our values, he effectively turned his back on the Marines and the membership in the state of Ohio by causing the national organization to lose money and then wanting you to pay double in life membership. He's causing issues with the membership on a national scale. Believe me when I tell you, they'll get more money for life membership. They'll pay you the same, if not less, the stipend that you get when you certify your life members. And you get nothing extra for it, like a separate issue on a magazine or maybe a pocket knife. You get squat for the double, 100% increase in membership, life membership monies. If you were paying $200 for life membership, you'll now pay $400. Where's that other $200 going? And why do you need it if your revenues are up? It's unbelievable, but no one can answer or quantify any of this when asked the question. They look at you like deer in the headlights. Like, oh my God, really? You're going to ask that question? Yeah, I'm asking because I'm concerned. All of this brings discredit to the Corps or the title of Marine, and especially to the Marine Corps League. So, summing it up, hopefully you understand his participation in and his involvement in what's going on with the Marine Corps League. We'll be moving on to cover the rest of the individuals in the Reprobates gang in session 7A and 7B. I thank you for watching. I thank you for looking and participating perhaps, or even understanding what's going on in your Marine Corps League. Until next time, Marines, Semper Fi, and God bless.